Welcome, dynamic current media viewers, to another episode of Insight. I am your host, Daniel Hayes, here with
Andrew Blackmore.
And our show is brought to you by Octet Solutions, the go-to guys for all of your IT needs. Blissful Blessings events, great for all sorts of events like weddings, parties, bar mitzvahs.
Anything you might need catering for.
Pretty much. Good planning organization. So look, we're here today talking about a very serious issue that is plaguing not only our society but pretty much the whole world. Drugs. Drugs are bad, okay? Remember that. I mean, I didn't make that up. That's not my material. In case it's copyrighted, it comes from South Park by Trey Parker and Matt Stone. So I'll give them credit for
smart guys. Those guys are.
I don't know.
Sophisticated humor.
Sophisticated humor. I haven't watched South Park in a really long time. I remember when I was a kid, I used to watch South Park. It came on Comedy Central at, I think, I don't know, whatever time it came on at, 9:30, 10, something like that, on Wednesdays or whatever, and I think they changed the days to
I'm sure
Thursdays.
they changed the days several times over, I'm sure.
Like the first time they changed the date and time, I stopped watching because I was busy on the other day, and then I never
That's
saw it
what
again.
happens, you know? It's like, we should do an episode on long-lost TV shows, from, you know, when we just lost track.
Yeah.
You just, like an old friend, you forget to keep in touch with, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like when your friend is going to college with you, and then they end up going to some other college, and then you never talk to them again.
Yeah.
You know, they're not there when you need them. But what's unfortunate is some people feel like drugs are there for them when they're really not, Andrew. So, look, this is a big topic, right? Drugs. You ever did drugs?
No, sir.
That's good. I never did drugs either, which is why we're successful people and we're smart. Because we kept our brain cells, you know? Other people, they do drugs and all their brain deteriorates.
Michael Phelps won, 8 medals with his... while doing drugs, right?
Right.
So who knows, you know? Maybe he would have had 16 if he hadn't done drugs, right?
You know, it's flash in a pan, right? You know, look at Sylvester Stallone and all these guys who are doing steroids and things like that. But that's a little different. I think maybe a little bit we'll touch on that in our second segment. Like some of the legal drugs maybe. You know, these pharmaceuticals. That's a whole other bag of beans. But right now we're talking about illegal narcotics. Illegal according to American standards.
Federal government in many states.
Yeah.
Although that's somewhat changing now with some states legalizing at least marijuana.
Well, let me tell you this actually. Okay, I'm opposed to drugs and all that sort of thing. But I did have an eye exam today. And I apparently have a abnormally large excavation in my optic nerve head. And this is indicative of a glaucoma. So once I heard that, I was like, wow, we should go to Denver. Let's take advantage of this, right? If it's medically necessary, I have no problem with the use of marijuana, you know.
There's actually some research saying it could be used to treat cancer, not just the pain to keep food down and stuff like that, but also actually treat the actual cancer. Really,
like, start curing that disease.
Right, exactly.
Because
obviously this research is in its infancy because it's only been pretty recently we've been able to do a lot of experiments with that kind of stuff. But, I mean, if that is true, that could be a pretty good application for something that, you know, is used right now recreationally.
It could just be some college kids and their buddies trying to get a grant to do this project, though.
Absolutely. But that's why replication is always important with these things, you know. To have somebody else go behind you, and that's why when you learn in science class, not to go too far off track, but that's why when you're in science class and they have you write down your procedures, that's why. So that somebody behind you will be able to replicate your results and say, okay, you know, here's the steps he took in his experiment, let me try to see if he did something wrong or if his results are going to be the same or different. But yeah, I mean that would be something that would be very interesting to see going forward. You know, especially with legalization efforts, that at least you'll be able to see some real studies on the effects of use.
Well, that's pretty. That is pretty interesting, Andrew. I would like to see how that unfolds. Now, with drugs, I mean, there's always a push on people to not do drugs, right? I mean, you've probably heard it from your elders, parents, teachers, law enforcement officers, all that sort of things. Don't do drugs. Why do they tell you not to do drugs? I mean, historically, it has been because of the negative effects that narcotics have. Remember those commercials like,
"Is your brain
exactly?
Is your brain on drugs?"
Exactly. Yeah. Any questions? Yeah. Well, do you have any, like a croissant and a slice of cheese? Maybe we could make something out of this brain.
Yeah. I mean, it looks pretty delicious, right?
Yeah. I had an egg and cheese croissant this morning. I was very pleased about that. My wife woke up and made me breakfast. It was very nice. I love you, honey bunches. But getting back to the effects of drugs. Okay, so you have drugs, right? I mean, they can do a lot of things. They can damage your brain, which is probably the most important part of your body because it controls pretty much everything else. So I mean, once that goes, you're done, right? Depending on the drug. I mean, you can talk about ecstasy. I hear about this other drug, Bali. Have you heard of this one?
I've heard, but not too familiar.
It's sort of like an ecstasy substitute sort of thing. I mean, obviously the stuff you make in your backyard, the meth, that damages people. So, I mean, the list goes on, cocaine, heroin, all that sort of thing. I mean, it can, I feel embarrassed to even go down the list. I mean, it can destroy your reproductive organs, kill your motivation. It can cause stroke, heart attack. It can, I mean, obviously you can OD if you take too much of it.
Up the road from here, Len Bias, he was a star basketball player at Maryland in the 80s, and he died from a cocaine overdose.
Yeah.
Not too long after he was picked up by the Celtics. So he had a whole bright future in front of him.
So
and,
totally, what a waste, right?
Yeah, that's stuff that definitely can be a problem. One of several, I think, side effects that you could see. Personally, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they are illegal, and you can't, go to a doctor and ask how, to minimize side effects and things. Because, as much as I don't support the recreational use of drugs, I do think that anything with doctor supervision is probably a lot safer than just chewing it on what your buddies say is safe.
Right.
Because they don't always have. Well, they don't always have your best interest, but they don't always know either.
Yeah, people can say anything. I mean,
Think about all what people said about sex growing up, right?
Yeah, a lot of misconceptions about that. Be careful with sex. That's a whole other topic.
Right.
Yeah, you could take drugs and then you have sex with the wrong person. Then you end up with all sorts of issues.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think there's a big problem with that. I think certainly the drug trade is a very dangerous business.
Now, I definitely want to get into that, but I think before we touch that, I started writing a little list of how we're going to organize this show. Very last minute here, we don't have a lot of prep time. We're busy professionals doing a lot of other things, but we try to take time out of our schedules to inform the public and help you guys with living life, that sort of thing. But the number 2 thing I want to talk about is, why are people doing drugs, right? We got a signal right there for the 2 minutes, but we're going to take a little bit more time than that because the first couple minutes were just fluff. Check the outtakes for that. But why are people doing drugs? What encourages people to do it, right? Everybody says, don't do it. I mean, is the high that great? I mean, you wouldn't know unless you try, so why even bother trying? What is it that encourages people to start doing drugs?
Well, it encourages people to drink alcohol.
Right.
Some people do it. I mean, with cocaine, it's not necessarily about being social. I think that's more marijuana, where people do it, and it might be jam sessioning in somebody's basement, and they're like, hey, light up a bowl or something, right? I mean, that's reality. It's the same thing with alcohol in that sense. Where people, hey, it's just something to do while you're chilling, hanging out. With cocaine, I think you definitely see it a lot with wealthy businessmen.
Yeah.
Some of that has to do with the price of cocaine, which is a little bit higher than marijuana, because marijuana is a lot easier to grow. It's one of the more easier plants to cultivate, where cocaine is a little bit more expensive. So, and that definitely can give you a feeling of being rushed and a kind of a high in that sense of feeling kind of really supercharged. But anything with drugs is because it makes you feel good, or at least you think it makes you feel good, at least in a temporary state.
Right. But there's got to be some great marketing that goes into this. I mean, if people keep hearing that it's terrible.
Have you ever seen any commercials for methamphetamine or cocaine?
All the time. Watch any rap song. I mean,
no, that's true.
Everybody wants to be Scarface and snort cocaine, and I smoke the purple Kush and I got the best weed, and I'm drinking this, sipping on scissor and all that sort of thing. And you look at the stars, right? I mean, if you ever saw the movie Blow, I remember a line where Johnny Depp, who was playing, Boston George, I forget his last name. But anyway, if it's accepted by the stars in Hollywood, actors and musicians, it's just going to permeate throughout the society. People look at those people who are in the eye of the media and begin to emulate them because they have a great influence on us, in our star-worshipping society. So, you've got that. I mean, I'm not even going to get into why people are not stopping that, with regard to censorship. But let's at least address that that's an issue. And then once you have people accept that in just general society, you have peer pressure again. Oh, try this. What are you, a pussy or blah blah blah?
Sure, I'm sure that happens as well. Yeah.
So, look, we're gonna have to take a break. We're gonna come back and we're gonna talk about where these drugs are coming from and how they get over here, because most drugs aren't made in America that we use, and how our government allows things like that to happen here in this day and age. Be right back.